Meet slime peg! Yo man, it's cool. It's cool, man. It's cool.
This person wearing a hockey mask is undoubtedly the most terrifying serial killer in history. With just a large machete in hand, he managed to kill his way from Earth all the way to outer space. Not only did his physical body receive unprecedented enhancements, but he also single-handedly destroyed an interstellar warship. The military eventually managed to capture him only through the use of heavy weaponry. However, they soon discovered an even more terrifying truth. Jason possesses immortality. No matter what methods the military used, they couldn't kill him. They could only chain him up and assign guards to watch over him day and night. But the scientist, Dr. Wimmer, saw the value in Jason's immortality and planned to put him in a laboratory for research. Researcher Rowan wanted to stop Dr. Wimmer's actions, but Dr. Wimmer had obtained authorization from the military, and they were planning to transfer Jason to the Scranton Research Center tonight. However, when SGT Marcus removed the bag covering Jason's head, he suddenly discovered that the soldiers hanging below were the ones assigned to guard Jason. At that moment, Jason appeared behind them and swiftly killed 2 soldiers. The others quickly reacted and started shooting, but they forgot that Jason is immortal, and he soon eliminated them all. Dr. Wimmer attempted to escape but was instantly killed by Jason throwing a spear at him. At that moment, Rowan outside seemed to hear something, and suddenly the 2-meter-thick metal door was slammed open. SGT Marcus, who had been lively just 5 minutes ago, was now on his last breath. Rowan anxiously asked SGT Marcus what had happened, but right after apologizing, SGT Marcus died. It was only at this moment that Rowan realized that inside the door had turned into a hellish scene. Seeing that this demon was about to wreak havoc on the world again, Rowan risked her life to lure him into the cryo chamber. When Jason chased her inside, Rowan hid behind a liquid nitrogen canister, waiting for the right moment. Then she used a shotgun to relentlessly attack Jason, ultimately forcing him into the cryo chamber. Immediately, Rowan hurriedly closed the chamber door and activated the switch. As liquid nitrogen continued to spray, Jason's movements grew slower and slower. Just as it looks like success is imminent, Jason surprises Rowan with a stab through the steel plate, hitting him directly in the vitals. By the time Rowan wanted to escape, it was already too late. As the nitrogen began to leak, the system automatically closed all exits, and in the end, Rowan and Jason were forever frozen here. 400 years quickly passed, and a human exploration team returned to the desolate Earth. They accidentally opened the cryo chamber and decided to search for treasures inside to bring back. They were thrilled by what they found in the cryogenic vault. Under Professor Lowe's command, they opened the chamber containing Jason, thinking that this ancient human specimen would be more valuable than an antique in the future world. However, they were unaware that valuable things often bring greater dangers. At that moment, one of the team members made a new discovery. A better preserved human specimen than Jason was buried beneath a pile of discarded plastic tubes. After scanning with a robot, it was found that Rowan's cellular activity was still present. With the medical technology of 400 years later, she could be fully revived. But since their intrusion has disrupted Rowan's sleep, they must treat her within 2 hours. So they rushed them aboard. They quickly returned to the transport ship parked in outer space. After a scientific examination, it was discovered that Jason's body cells had no signs of life and had lost any value for treatment. The only purpose remaining for him was to be sent to a museum for exhibition. Rowan's body cells still had 1/4 of vitality, and with the use of medical nanobots, she could be revived within half an hour. Professor Lowe immediately began the process of cellular regeneration treatment for Rowan. As the nanobots gradually enveloped Rowan's body, they immediately infiltrated her from a microscopic level, repairing her damaged tissues and organs. Then, 1,000 milliliters of artificial blood plasma were injected. Within 20 minutes, Rowan regained consciousness.
Easy.
Professor Lowe, despite being slapped by Rowan, was not upset but rather delighted because he had already contacted his boss, Dieter. Selling these ancient artifacts would allow them to live in luxury. However, the first thing Rowan asked upon waking up was whether Jason had been captured. Upon hearing this, Professor Lowe immediately changed the subject and told Rowan that it was now the year 2455. She could recover her body here first, and then the door to the new world would open for her. However, all of them still don't know that the door to hell will be open to them first. Adrian's face instantly froze into a lump of ice and was mercilessly smashed by Jason, then casually thrown on the ground. This man is undoubtedly the most powerful serial killer in history. However, at this moment, the humans from 400 years in the future on the transport ship had no idea what kind of demon they had brought back. The only one who realized the seriousness of the situation, Rowan, immediately told Professor Lowe about the terrifying aspects of Jason. Only freezing could stop Jason's murderous desires, but Professor Lowe had already sold Jason for a good price and didn't believe Rowan's words at all. Moreover, they conducted a comprehensive scan of Jason, concluding that there was no possibility of him being revived. However, the discovery of the bodies of several team members undoubtedly proved the horror of Jason, but Professor Lowe was unwilling to give up this invaluable treasure. He ordered SGT Brodsky to capture Jason alive. However, the experienced SGT Brodsky did not obey Professor Lowe's command. He ordered his subordinates to shoot Jason indiscriminately. Subsequently, everyone took the most advanced weapons and began to search for Jason's whereabouts individually. Meanwhile, in another section of the warehouse, a team member suddenly sensed something unusual behind him. A strange monster, seemingly appearing out of nowhere, almost turned him into pulp with a single slap. As the team member removed his helmet to relax, a few drops of slime suddenly fell from above, and another monster rushed out. Just as the situation seemed dire, another team member intervened just in time to save him, but before they could breathe a sigh of relief, Jason suddenly appeared and swiftly dispatched one of the monsters with a single slash. It turned out that they were playing a virtual game and had no idea that a serial killer had emerged on the spaceship. At that moment, Jason sliced Azrael in half, followed by decapitating Dallas with a single strike. With the virtual reality fading away, Jason stood in the empty space among them. When Azrael reacted, it was too late. Jason grabbed him by the neck and snapped Azrael's body in half. Dallas met a similar fate soon after Azrael. By the time the other team members discovered them, they were already dead, but everyone underestimated Jason's terror. He excelled at systematically targeting his chosen prey in narrow terrain. Once they discovered Jason, it meant the end for that person. Soon, all the team members were killed by Jason. By the time SGT Brodsky sensed something was wrong, he was the only one left in the cargo hold. However, in the next second, Jason suddenly grabbed SGT Brodsky from behind by the neck and struck him directly in a vital spot. Listening to the fading screams outside, Rowan and the others realized that all the security team members outside had been killed by Jason. Professor Lowe immediately instructed the driver to return to the nearest spaceport for docking. Only the soldiers there could eliminate Jason, but before the pilot could be happy for 2 seconds, Jason had already sneaked in. The spaceship lost control and accelerated towards the spaceport, scraping against the dome and crashing into the main building of the spaceport. When they finally reacted, the entire spaceport had been reduced to rubble, leaving everyone dumbfounded. But the most lethal threat was still Jason on the spaceship. Before they could catch their breath, Jason suddenly shattered the glass and charged in. The group hurriedly fled the control room in panic. As they recovered, they realized that Professor Lowe had been left behind in the control room.
Hi.
Upon hearing the agonizing screams from Professor Lowe, they decided to immediately board the escape pods and leave the spaceship. However, they never expected that Kinsa, out of excessive fear, had already closed the pod doors, blocking their last escape route. At that moment, Jason was not yet chasing them, but Kinsa refused to open the escape pod. Without disconnecting the fuel line, Kinsa prematurely activated the engine, causing the escape pod to collide with the bottom of the spaceship, resulting in a violent explosion. However, the situation worsened as Jason closed in on them, just when they had no way out. Sunaran suddenly stood up, followed by the fully armed robot, KM-14. Just as they felt victory was within reach, Jason swiftly threw a flying knife, directly killing KM-14. But then, KM-14 suddenly came back to life.
Gotcha!
Under the dual support of KM-14 and the future weapon, Jason was defeated and was powerless. Even the regeneration of his cells gradually couldn't keep up with the pace of destruction. Just as KM-14 was about to deliver the final blow to Jason, Jason unexpectedly punched her to the ground. Fortunately, SGT Brodsky, who was not completely dead, arrived just in time. Taking advantage of the moment, KM-14 launched a counterattack, turning Jason into a bullet-riddled mess. With the final shell fired, Jason was finally put to rest. Seeing Jason's battered body, everyone let out a sigh of relief. They quickly carried SGT Brodsky into the medical bay and used nanobots to repair his injured body. SGT Brodsky recovered quickly, however, due to the previous impact on the spaceship. It was set to explode in 30 minutes. At this moment, Rowan proposed detaching the damaged section of the ship by blowing up the bridge. This would delay the explosion of the spaceship, so they immediately began to split up to plant the bombs, but they didn't realize that the medical system had detected a body in need of treatment nearby. As a result, Jason was revived by the nanobots by mistake. Jason endured 400 years of imprisonment, over 30,000 cryogenic freezes, countless brutal tortures, and incinerations, yet he could not be killed completely. Jason's body has not only been strengthened like never before, but he also blew up an intergalactic battleship by himself. By the time they realized it, it was too late. Jason's body cells had fused with the surrounding space metal. Thanks to the repair by nanobots, the current Jason not only possessed immense strength but also an indestructible body. Looking at the reanimated, defeated man in front of him, KM-14 once again stepped in front of the crowd. Subsequently, KM-14 pulled out two .40 caliber pistols and launched a frenzy of shots at Jason. However, the bullets had no effect on Jason's body this time. Instead, they only fueled his anger.
You guys might want to run.
Against the unstoppable immortal Jason, they had no chance of resistance. Fortunately, Janessa opened the hatch in time, allowing them to escape from the bridge, but the detonator was left inside. Injured and unable to escape, Waylander, seeing Jason getting closer, hastily pressed the detonation switch, blowing up the bridge of the spaceship prematurely. Jason was instantly propelled away. The damaged section of the ship successfully separated from the bridge. 10 minutes later, a rescue ship arrived on schedule. The pilot immediately signaled to them that the ship would take them out at the other side of the exit. However, before they could rejoice for 2 seconds, Jason suddenly punched through the hull of the transport ship. The cabin began to lose pressure instantly, and Janessa, who was at the back of the pack, was suddenly sucked back in. To minimize the suction, Janessa could only struggle on the ground, but this kind of negative pressure is not humanly possible. Janessa was directly sucked out of the small hole. The rest of the group didn't dare to delay any longer and hurriedly closed the hatch, but before they could breathe a sigh of relief, Jason outside the ship was destroying the hull and the isolation hatch couldn't hold him back for long. To make matters worse, the rescue ship accidentally damaged the power supply to the launch doors while connecting to the escape hatch. Now, only the experienced SGT Brodsky could go outside and repair it, but after opening the control panel, SGT Brodsky discovered that it would take 15 minutes to reroute the power, and Jason wouldn't give them that time. After breaking several isolation airlock doors in succession, Jason quickly hunted them down and reached the control room. At that moment, Sunaran suddenly had an idea. He immediately activated a virtual reality game that completely recreated Crystal Lake on Earth as it was 400 years ago, the place where Jason was once born. But Sunaran soon stopped smiling. The nanobot-enhanced Jason seemed to see through the virtual reality and started walking toward him. To divert Jason's attention, Sunaran hurriedly projected two virtual beauties. Seeing this, Jason, in a bestial state, lunged at them. On the other side, SGT Brodsky also took this opportunity to switch the power and open the escape route. However, at that moment, the spaceship exploded, causing the virtual reality game to gradually malfunction, allowing Jason to quickly enter the control room. Just at the critical moment, SGT Brodsky timely closed the hatch, allowing the rescue ship to escape smoothly. Knowing that his death was imminent, SGT Brodsky no longer feared Jason and directly blew up a spacecraft. However, Sunaran and Rowan witnessed a horrifying scene. Jason survived the explosion and flew towards them using the shockwave as leverage. As they faced imminent doom, SGT Brodsky appeared and grabbed hold of Jason, pushing him towards nearby Earth 2. As they plummeted, Jason's outer metal layer began to melt rapidly. A couple by the lake thought they saw a shooting star, but little did they realize that Jason would soon be here to cause even more havoc.